It's the Halloween season and we're gonna do a Christmas movie. This is one of my favorite Christmas movies, Gremlins. All right, so we've got quite a few hazards here. So here's our NG2 risk assessment. First of all, we always remember to fill in this top bit here. So this is the Montgomery Ward department store. And yes, it is a Christmas movie because it was released on the 7th of December 1984. So it's a definitely a horribly funny Christmas movie. We base our risk assessment on an area, not a task. That's the thing with NEBOSH. They encourage you to look at an area, geographical zone. So I've put down the outdoor goods section. But in this particular video, I'm going to focus on this chainsaw activity, if you like. Now, here's a mistake to avoid. The mistake is to start jumbling all of the chainsaw hazards into one hazard. So let me demonstrate what that might look like. And so you choose your hazard category, which would be work equipment, and you could say use of the chainsaw. And I would suggest that's not a very specific hazard. You might want to write something a bit more descriptive. Anyway, here's the mistake that you must avoid, or you could get yourself failed. So we could say users of the chainsaw could suffer cuts. Okay, so there's one risk from using the chainsaw. And then you might say, oh, and you could suffer hearing damage from the noise. Anyone in the area could suffer hearing damage from noise. And what else is there? There's also fumes from the petrol engine, inhalation of fumes from petrol and exhaust, something like that. And what else is there? There's hand-arm vibration. Okay, hand-arm vibration could lead to vibration white finger. All right, now this is a major mistake because you have just jumbled 4 different hazards into one. The other problem with this is that it's just messy because each one of those 4 hazards has its own control measures, right? There are quite a few control measures for each one of those, and there might be quite a few different recommendations, and it's just one big messy jumble. So what we do is that we just split them out. You have 1 hazard per row. So this is what we do. We have work equipment use of the chainsaw, which has a rotating blade, a rotating and sharp blade. There we are. Then we've got a work equipment hazard. Then we've got the noise issue. So hazard category, noise. Noise from the chainsaw is in excess of whatever the noise level is. In excess of what? Let's say it's about 92 decibels or something like that. You find out how loud your chainsaw is. Then we've got the fumes. Fumes would be a substance hazardous to health. So we could say hazardous substances, exhaust fumes during use of petrol-powered chainsaw. And then in the last one here, I've got another box there, we could talk about the hand-arm vibration. So vibration is a hazard category. We could say exposure to hand-arm vibration during use of the chainsaw. So the moral of that is if you have a piece of equipment which you're putting on your risk assessment and it presents you with quite a few different significant hazards, make sure you split those up on your risk assessment into separate rows. And then what we do is we could start to copy our various who might be harmed and how here. And by the way, these are not very good at all. We're gonna have to write a little bit more on each one of these. Not very good at all. What we need in this section here, we need 3 things. I've said it before, I'm gonna say it again. We need a job title. We need a hazardous event. So that's the how. And then we need an injury, a specific injury. So what do we got here? We've got users of the chainsaws. Users of the chainsaw, okay, that's good enough as a job title. Could suffer cuts, all right? Cut is an injury, it's a specific injury, so that's okay. But what we're missing is kind of the hazardous event. So what we would say is users of the chainsaw could accidentally touch the blade during use, or suffer, this is a chainsaw specific injury, suffer a kickback incident, and suffer, let's be a bit more specific, it's not just cuts, and suffer severe cuts to hands, legs, and face, possibly leading to a fatality. Hey, how about that? Let's be a little bit more specific. And notice now, we've got a lot more detail. It almost tells you a little story. So what controls do we currently have at the moment? Let's look at that scene again and I'll just observe how Stripe, the gremlin, is using that, and let's see if we can spot the controls on the chainsaw. This is the best shot I can get, and well, what I could say is, first of all, I don't want to do the hierarchy of control backwards here, but Stripe's not wearing any PPE whatsoever. Normally, when you use a chainsaw, you're going to have kind of armor on your legs, you're going to have some gloves on, you're going to have a fair bit of PPE in case you accidentally whack yourself in the legs. Now, if we look at the chainsaw, actually, it's not a petrol-powered chainsaw, this. We're going to see a cable in a moment. This is an electric chainsaw. So the fumes, we don't need that at all. We could delete the whole fume thing. But now we do have, instead, we have an electric cable. So if we go back to our risk assessment, we'd probably want to delete that whole bit there and change that to an electric cable. And strictly speaking, we're going to have slips and trips. That is the new hazard category. And we could say, now here's the thing, we probably wouldn't want to have just the electric cable from the chainsaw on our risk assessment. Remember, the scope of our risk assessment is the whole of the outdoor goods section. And I dare say, you've got more trip hazards than just the electric cable. I bet there's all kinds of stuff on the floor. Yeah, look at that mess there. We've got all kinds of stuff on the floor here. So what you'd want to do is group all of those into one hazard, slips and trips. So hazard category slips and trips, and we could say presence of various trip hazards, such as electrical cables of products being demonstrated, boxes of stored goods and other products. Something like that. And you could then mention, any other trip hazards you've got, like, ramps or steps or things like that. Just group everything together. You don't want to have a situation where you've got 10 trip hazards on your risk assessment. Oh, look, there's a cable. Oh, look, there's a box. Because at that point, you're not doing a risk assessment anymore. You're doing an inspection, and your risk assessment is not an inspection. Anyway, back to the chainsaw. Just want to point out something on here. Well, a couple of things actually. First of all, Stripe's technique is not great. Notice how Stripe is cutting the baseball bat right near the very end of the chainsaw. Bless you, sir. It's all the wood dust from the baseball bat making my video team sneeze over here. When you use the chainsaw at the very tip, that increases the chances of a kickback occurring. You've got far less control if the chainsaw just suddenly goes whack in your face. Another thing I want to point out is that chainsaws often come with something called a guard brake or a blade brake. That little thing there that you see, that little shape, when Stripe suffers a kickback, that chainsaw is going to go towards hitting him, and he's going to accidentally press that guard brake, which is or the blade brake at the front, and it's going to flick a little switch, which almost instantly is going to stop the blade from spinning. Now, when deciding on the control measures for your chainsaw here, it's always good to refer back to recognized standards and recognized guidance. Now, on our e-learning system, what you'll have is that we've got a whole menu of control measures here for each hazard. Notice here we've got noise, vibration, whole body vibration, so on. This is going to be very, very useful for most hazards, but it might not be quite as useful for a chainsaw. Whilst we do have noise, whilst we do have hand-arm vibration, and we've got a load of different controls that you could mention in your risk assessment here, we don't have chainsaws, because chainsaws are not on the syllabus of the NEBOSH General Certificate, so we haven't included it. So what you should do is that you should just Google some guidance from the HSE. So I've Googled here, Chainsaw Safety HSE, and that gave me a number of different resources, and here's one here. We've got this INDG document, Chainsaws at Work, and it gives you a whole load of suggestions on the training for workers, controlling young workers, the health risks, and some of the technical controls as well. There we are, and there we go. If I zoom in there, look at that there, combined chain brake and front hand guard. That's what I was talking about. It's like, that's the thing which you trigger when you get a kickback. Anyway, so use official guidance documents to help you populate your control measures in here, because if you comply with the guidance or the approved codes of practice, then in theory you should have done everything that is reasonably practicable, and you would have lowered the risk to as low a level as is reasonable, and your examiner will think, yeah, fair play to you, you've covered everything that I would expect to see. Anyway, best of luck with that, and let me know which Gremlins movie is your favorite. I think it's number 1.